Facebook continues to take some knocks on their stock price in relation to the disclosure that they have permitted details of Facebook users to be sold to many firms, including unscrupulous companies such as Cambridge Analytica. The problems have become so monumental to Facebook that CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who had been silent on the ongoing debate about user information sharing and getting profits from that, well, now he's come out personally and addressed the issue, and he actually apologized to Facebook users. Here to discuss, public affairs strategist and political commentator Eric Reimer, who wrote an opinion editorial on the subject. Eric, thanks for being with us. Let's take a listen to what Mr. Zuckerberg had to say.
So this was a major breach of trust, and I'm really sorry that this happened. We have a basic responsibility to protect people's data, and if we can't do that, then we don't deserve to have the opportunity to serve people.
Eric, that being silent up until yesterday when he said that, and that was a pretty major mea culpa. Do you think it's going to be enough?
I mean, I think definitely Facebook finds itself in a very difficult situation, and Zuckerberg's big public apology, rare for Facebook, fully taking responsibility and announcing various data reforms to how apps can utilize data, the permissions they need and whatnot, shows how serious they understand it to be. I think this also comes on top of a year of other regulatory troubles for Facebook. And so I think definitely there's a lot of worries, both from a user standpoint, a investor standpoint, as well as policymakers on the Hill. I think users certainly are jolted that this app was able to collect so much information without their consent, because even though 270,000 people signed up for the app and gave their information willingly, over 50 million people had their data harvested through being friends of people who use the app. And so essentially everyone who actually had their information taken did not consent to the app. And I think for investors too, because the thing is that this incident also shows that Facebook is not able to properly perhaps control its data, because it firstly allowed this professor to harvest a lot of that data. Initially, they allowed him to do it with permission, but a lot of it was then he expanded a lot more. And then they also weren't able to stop him from transferring the data to Cambridge Analytica. And lastly, they had thought for 2 years they had deleted the data, but in fact, they apparently did not. And so I think for investors, because Facebook derives the entirety of its revenue, which is very profitable, from advertising. And the reason advertisers choose to advertise on Facebook is because they can use data targeting to target people and not waste a lot of money on people who might not be interested. And so the fact that Facebook has exclusive control over its data is how it draws advertisers. And the fact that it's losing control over its data basically is very worrisome, because as people who've worked in the tech field know, a lot of AI really relies on the kind of data you're using, which is why data is so valuable. And so I think for investors is worrying as well. And so from the regulatory front too, we see people on the Hill getting more worried. The House Energy and Commerce Committee has requested that Zuckerberg himself testify about this incident for the first time in person, and Zuckerberg has agreed. And so I think it's a very complex, multifaceted drama, and one that's going to have a big impact for Facebook's 2 billion users.
Let me ask you, I want to rewind because you said a lot there, we appreciate it, but if you go back to what you're talking about, that not everybody consented, so certainly you had the people who did consent, but then explain sort of the technical attributes, Eric, of how, through your friends, et cetera, Facebook could essentially tunnel in and get your data if you had not consented.
And so essentially, Facebook itself has a vast array of data on its users, ranging from explicit data to more metadata, such as location and whatnot. For this app, however, which the professor used to collect data, so essentially Facebook authorized him to create a personality mapping thing based on a person's interests, Facebook activities, whatnot, and so users were paid essentially to take that survey. However, the app then also essentially scanned all of their friends and collected the same information from their friends and connections as well. And so everything that the user themselves could see once the app connected with their account, they then were allowed in the app mine that information as well. And so, for example, for a person who has 500 friends on Facebook, 1,000 friends on Facebook, from just one person consenting, essentially the app would harvest over 1,000 people like that. And they said they found they were able to collect data extremely fast through this way. And and all without these friends and whatnot consenting to it. And so it really just exploded very, very fast.
Yeah, that really is abhorrent and not something that, I mean, Facebook should be ashamed of it, and so that apology was certainly worthy. Let me ask you, Eric, I know you pay a lot of attention to Capitol Hill, and generally with the Republican House and Senate, you know, you don't think that there's going to be a lot more regulations coming down the pike. But do you think this might be one area where even Republican Congress, who's, you know, in favor of free markets, et cetera, might want to do something to protect their constituents, i.e. consumers?
I mean, I think definitely lawmakers on both sides of the aisle want to make sure that consumers are protected. And certainly I feel a lot of consumers, or I mean, we see the evidence, a lot of consumers are really jolted by this incident and the fact that their data was harvested, not just harvested, but then distributed to people. I mean, this is their private information that was spread around. And I mean, I think right now the big block on Capitol Hill for regulation is the fact that, firstly, a lot of policymakers don't really fully they aren't sure what impact regulation would have on this. Because the thing is, like, even though the tech companies are now gigantic, multi-trillion dollars, you know, for the big players, they still are relatively new in the economy. They only been around for about 10 or 20 years at their current size, these modern internet service companies. And so a lot of policymakers are very afraid of, like, touching it. And, like, if they regulate it improperly, they're afraid that it might cause the industry to be very disrupted and then a lot of chaos to ensue. And even for those who have very clear beliefs about how they want to regulate tech companies, like, you know, there's some variety of solutions out there ranging from breaking up big tech at one end to like some more moderate regulatory oversights, SROs for big tech or whatnot. Except even for those who have strong beliefs about it, there's a lack of unity among all of that. And given the way Congress currently is, I doubt that there could be any coherent legislation that would pass from a coalition on those
I think
subjects.
you're probably right. They don't want to do any harm by passing something inappropriate. Eric Reimer, public affairs strategist and political commentator. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise, Eric.
Thanks so much.
And before we go, we know that blockchain is the technology that underlies the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but it's also the technology that will change many other things. One